All right. Hi there. So this is Algebra 2, and this is just a practice test I'm going to run through for Unit 2. And this is Part 1. So make sure you have all your notes out. Learning Target 2.1. There should be 2 sets of notes. Quadratic to standard form. You should also have 2.2, both parts. And then 2.3. So you'll want to use your notes. I have mine off to the side to help me with this. So you should do the same thing. So looking at the first target here, converting quadratic functions to standard form. So remember, we are going to get it in this form, and we need the standard form, which, as you recall, standard is that ax squared plus bx plus c. A couple things to remember. A, B, and C are numbers. And even more importantly, C is our y-intercept. If we ever get a question like that, this will always give us our y-intercept. So this first one, it just wants us to figure out which one would be equivalent. So there's 2 ways to look at this. You can do the double distributive. You can do the box method. You can FOIL. Or if you wanted to, you could actually factor if it was easier for you to figure out which 2 and find the roots. Now, I like double distributive, so I'm going to write it bigger down here so you can see all my work. So double distribute, I do it this way, where I take the first term and I double distribute. So x times x and x times -7. So x times x is x squared. And then I have x times -7, so that's -7x. I like to go to the bottom, and I like to have, I take this second term, -3 times x. So -3x, because those are included, the signs in front of them. And then I take -3 times -7, which is a +21. Okay, so again, make sure you're using your calculators too. So we then just combine our like terms. Usually it's the 2 terms in the middle that are alike, and we have to be careful. If we take a -7 plus a -3, 7, 8, 9, 10, so that should give us -10x. Do not get confused on there. Sometimes I have people just add them together and make it positive. You have to be very careful. So if you put in -7 plus -3 in your calculator. So we just pick the one that matches it. And if you notice, that would be A. Okay? 2, just saying that, show that this here is a quadratic function by writing it in standard form. So same type of problem. Again, if you wanted to do the box method or FOIL, you can do so. You can also work backwards. Again, I like to do the double distributive. So I'm going to rewrite it so it's easier to see down here. And I take my first term and I double it. So 3x times 2x gives me a 3 times 2 is 6x squared, and that gets squared. And then 3x times 1 gives me a +3x. And then that's when I go on to the bottom. That's where we get the double distributive. I take this -4 times 2x, so -8x, and then I take this one again and I go to the other one. -4 times 1 is -4. And then again, we're usually left with just combining the like terms in the middle. So at +3x and a -8x, so we'd have 6x squared stays, and then that's a -5x. You have to be careful, the x stays with it, the negative is bigger, and then -4. So we want to make sure we pick the correct one right here. So that would be C. Okay, let's look at number 3. Converting the quadratic into standard form. And then this one, find the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. So once we solve this, or we, factor it out, you're going to be picking, remember, this is the C. That's the y-coordinate. We would write it as 0, -4. So once we do this for the new problem, that's what it's asking us to do. So let's look at, again, I like to rewrite it. So when you have something on the outside here, you have to distribute first. So I'll write it bigger so we can see it. It says 2 times x minus 2, and then it's x minus 5. So I just rewrote it so we could see it bigger. Now remember, when there's something on the outside, I actually have to distribute that before we can even do anything else. So this is 2x, and then 2 times -2 is -4. So now that that one is done, I like to kind of put some scribbles through it so I don't accidentally use it. And I'm going to drop down this x minus 5 again, just so I don't accidentally use it again. So we had to do this part first. We had to distribute. Now we're going to double distribute, even though we distributed already. So I take my first term and I double it. 2x times x, so 2x squared. And then 2x times -5 is a -10, and then the x stays with it. And then I have my -4, and I'm going to double distribute it. -4 times x is -4x. -4 times -5 is a +20. Okay? Now from here, we can combine like terms still in the middle, but the question is asking us what's the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. So this middle one is actually our b term, but I'll rewrite it just so we have it. It becomes 2x squared, and then -10x plus a -4 is -14x. But then here's the important part, plus 20. The y-intercept is this part right here. So the y-intercept is 0, 20, and this is the y-coordinate because it goes x, y. So this is actually our final answer. It's just 20. Okay? Sorry if that's a little fuzzy. All right, number 4. Same thing, but there's a couple more steps. So remember, we're going to do this part first. That means we take the 2, x minus 2, and we multiply x minus 2. We will deal with the plus 3 later, but I'll still drop it down over here because we're going to be adding that like term later. So x squared, because x times x is x squared, and then x times -2 is a -2x. If I look at the second part, I have a -2 times x, so -2x, and then a -2 times -2 is +4. And then this is where I would take my plus 3 and add it down here, because now we're going to combine like terms. So I have, there's no other x squares, so I'm just going to drop that down, x squared, and then a -2x and a -2x. If you add those together, combining means add, so that's a -4x or a -4x. And then we can add these two together. A lot of people forget to add this down later, but plus 7. So we want to make sure that we pick the correct one. It's a -2 and a -2, so we want to make sure we select the right term here. All right. Writing the function in standard form here. So there's a couple ways to look at it. However, when I look at my answers, I see all of them start with a half. So I'm going to wait to do this half to the end. I'm going to put it on at the end. I'm actually going to do this part first. Okay, so I'm going to do the x plus 6 and the x plus 6. And we'll just remember all of these are going to start, we'll be tacking this on later, because if you notice, they all look like that. But this is, I'm going to do this part first. And then we have to remember, I'm going to have a -5 later. Okay, I'm not forgetting about this 1/2. I'm just going to do it later. So again, double distribute. I have x times x gives me x squared. I have x times 6 gives me a positive 6x. I then have, so I go down, 6 times a positive x is a positive 6x. 6 times a positive 6 gives me a positive 36. And then if you recall, we still have to bring this down, so minus 5. Okay? And then we are taking the 1/2 times the x, so we know that it is going to be 1/2 x squared. So I'm going to pop that down there now just because we know that goes there. And then I'm going to combine my like terms. So I have an 1/2 x squared, 6 and 6 is a positive 12x. 36 minus 5 is a positive 31. Okay, so we just got to make sure we select the correct one and we get C. So that is our first target that we were dealing with, the 2.1 A and B. All right, let's move on to the next target. This is target 2.2. And again, this was a two-part target, so we're going to do both parts of them. Converting the quadratics to intercept form. Remember, that's y equals mx plus b. However, this is the section I actually like to go when we are going to factor through. I like to go backwards and check. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to find out if you have the right answer or not. So you can factor if you want, okay? Or you can go through and remember with double distribute, to get the first term, you take the x times the x. So x times x is x squared. I'm not going to get x squared up here. I can get rid of that right away. 5x times x. Oh, that does give me a 5x squared, so I like that one. 5x times x, oh, that one gives me a 5x squared. 5x times x. So all of these, the rest of them do give me a 5x squared. So that was one easy way to get rid of one choice without even doing much. Now, there's 2 ways to do it. We can just factor it and find the roots, or we can test both of these. We can just double distribute all of them to see which one matches. So I'm going to show you both ways. Now, when there's a number in front of the x squared, I think it's easier to just double distribute and see which one matches, because then you don't have to multiply the a and the c. So I'm going to give you that little hint. If there is a number in front of the x squared, I'm going to say to you, I would do the double distribute method and just try all of them. And remember, so here's another thing we have to remember. If we have a positive number at the end and a negative number in the middle, we have certain signs to look for. Okay, so let's go ahead and just try B, the 5x squared. So I'm going to write it over here to the side, B. So 5x squared, and then I get it, and then it would be minus 15x. And then I'll do the bottom ones. So that's a positive 2x and a minus 6. So even without combining like terms, if I have a minus 6 and there's a plus 6, I know it's not this one. Let's keep going. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so let's try this one again. So we know it's a 5x squared, and then 5 plus 15x. Oops, what's going on here? Sorry about that. Let me move this off here. Plus a 15x. So remember, we're looking for a negative in the middle. So if we have a big number plus 15x, that's telling me we're probably not going to get a negative 17. But we're going to keep going just so you can see. And then I would have a negative 2x minus 2x. So even if I go any further, look at this. When you combine these two, I don't get a negative 17. I know it's not this one. So it has to be D. I also want to show you something. Here's a little hint. If you have a negative in the middle and you have a positive at the end, you are going to have two negative signs because a negative times a negative gets you this positive at the end. And then you know if the middle one is negative, you have to have two negative signs here. That's just something I remembered, and I always, teach that little trick in Algebra 1, something to remember that by. But again, we went through and we knew it wasn't those. I would just double check. So 5x is 5x squared, and then we do 5x, that's minus 15x. So I can see right there I'm getting a big negative x, so that's going to be good because we want a negative 17. And then I do negative 2x minus 2x. So right there, when those go together, that gives me a negative 17. And then the last one, negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6. So that's why this one would work. All right. Now we're looking at 7. And 7 is that one where we call it a difference of squares. There's no middle term. So that's one, if you remember, is going to be that opposite sign. So we should have a plus 7 and a minus 7. It's a difference of squares. That's what we call it. So it has to be D. And just looking at, we would never have two of the same signs because that wouldn't get rid of the middle term. But just remembering, if you're missing a middle term and you just have nothing in front of here, you're going to have the two different. And that's why they call it different of squares. So all right, let's look at number 8. Number 8, again, so we have, this is another way to do it. So we can go through if we wanted, and we can do what we did with the first one. We could factor, FOIL, double distribute, do the box method for each one. But when there's no number in front of the x, it's a little bit easier to factor it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the factoring this time method. However, if you want to go back and just double distribute and see which one matches, that's a good strategy as well. But I'm going to show you the other way too. So if you recall, we are finding the factors of this outer number. So I look at all the factors of 9. I just kind of listed here. 1 times 9. So when you find the factors, when you add them together, they need to equal the middle term of negative 6. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for factors of our C, if it's in this form, or that outside number with no variable. And then the middle term, we're looking for what two factors, when you add them together, they can be positive and negatives, would equal that negative 6. So to get a positive 9, we could have two negatives because we have a negative term in the middle. So a negative 1 times a negative 9. When you add those together, you actually get a negative 10. So that's not going to give me the right answer. So then I'm going to go through other ones. I know 3 and 3. So if I take a negative 3 times a negative 3, yes, it equals. And again, that gives me a positive 9. And also that gives me a negative 6. So right away, I know that these are the terms I want. So an x goes here and an x goes here because there's no number in front of it. And then these are my two terms, minus 3, minus 3. That's how I found it. You take the factors of this outside number, whatever the sign is, and that when you add them together, it gets you the middle term. So I'm going to look at that one and I can see this one matches. Now you can't see, it's not written this way, but as you can see, it's two of the same and it's squared. So that's why it's this one. That really means the same thing. All right, let's look at number 9. When this is factored, x squared plus 5x plus 6 is factored. The result is the product of two binomials. So that just means these two things, right? What we've been dealing with all along. What is one possible value of A or B? So we are going to factor this like we did over here, and we're just going to pick one of the numbers. This would be the A, this would be the B. So again, let's do what we did before. We know we're going to have an X. There's no number in front of the X, so it's an X and an X. These are the ones I like to factor when there's no number out front. And then we have to take this positive 6. I'm going to list the factors that when I add them together, they equal that positive 5 in the middle. So 6, I know 1 times 6, that actually, when I add them, that equals 7. Well, we don't want a 7 in the middle, so it's not there. What about if I were to take 3 and a 2? Well, actually, when I add 3 and 2, I get 5. So it's a positive 3 and a positive 2, so plus 3 and plus 2. And possible A or B, you could have put 3 or 2. All right, 10. We're looking at the same thing. So when we go to factor this, we're going to do the same thing. We know that we have an X and an X, and we're going to find the factors of negative 15. So when I add them together, they have to equal negative 2. So remember, when we multiply, one thing to remember is how do we get a negative number when we multiply? It's always going to be a negative times a positive. So I like to keep that in mind. So if I do say, I want to get a negative 2 in the middle, I know I'm going to need two numbers kind of close to each other. You can always start though, 15. I know 5 goes into 15. That's always a good one. So I could say a negative 3 and a positive 5, or I could say a positive 3 and a negative 5. Both of those give me a negative 15. And then when we add them together, negative 3 plus 5 gives me a positive 2. That's not what I want. I want a negative 2. But what about 3 plus negative 5? That gives me a negative 2. So I know these are my two answers. So X would be a positive 3 and a negative 5. That's how I find the two answers. When I go into there, those are the two roots. So I'm just going to pick the one. There is no X plus 3, so I got to do X minus 5. Okay. All right, let's look at the last one. This one's just going a little bit further. First, we have to do this part here where we're converting this into intercept form. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get it into, go back to like the target we just did before this on the page. We need to get it into standard form, and then we need to find the roots. Okay. There's another way, but I don't think we didn't get into that yet. So I'm just going to do it the normal way where we're used to doing it on the front. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the double distributed first of all. Remember, you'll add that negative 9 later or subtract it, whatever. So x squared, and then we have minus 2x. And then if I go to the bottom, that's a minus 2x, and a negative 2 times it's a plus 4. And I'm going to drop down this minus 9. So then again, I have x squared. These two go together and give me a negative 4x. And then when I add these two together, it gives me a negative 5. So now we are going to factor. So again, get ready here. I know I have an x and an x, and this is the number we're factoring. We're going to find the factors of negative 5 that when we add them together, they equal negative 4. So remember, just like the other one we had, in order to get a negative number, you should be multiplying a positive and a negative. So I could do 1 times negative 5. That would give me negative 5. But then let's add them. 1 plus negative 5 gives me -4. Oh, it just so happens I picked the correct one to start with. You could have started with -1 times +5, but then you would have got a +4. So just showing you right here, this is how we found out when we add these together, the two factors. So it's a +1 and a -5. See how it's written just a little bit different? It doesn't matter what order. Okay? All right, and then our last target, this is our vertex form. So this is the last one that we did. And just remember, there's some tricks here where we remember in vertex form, we do want to remember if we have to find our vertex, that's that -b/2 times a. That gives us the x of the vertex. And then to find the y of the vertex, you can plug it back in. If it's in vertex form, you can remember this is our x value, but remember it's the opposite. So it's really, instead of -3, it's actually a 3 because it's the opposite. X is always its opposite in this form, but then our y is right here. So this is our x inside of here, and this is our y. So it's 3 and 1. So when it's in this form, it's pretty easy to pull out because this is the vertex form. So the opposite of x and then y is what it is. So that one was pretty easy. As long as you knew vertex form, you have to know what's in here is the x, you just make it its opposite. What's out here is the y. All right, let's do convert the quadratic into vertex form. So it's not in vertex form. So here is where we use our formula. It is in standard form. So we have an A, we have our B, we have our C. We don't really need the C. To find the x of the vertex, we're going to use this. So I'm going to use -b times 2a. Okay? Negative, my b is 22 divided by 2 times a, which a is just 1. There's nothing there, right? So if I do that, -22 divided by 2 times 1 is 2. So that would be -11. That is our x. Remember, as we went back up here, if we have a negative for our x, we put it in as a positive x. So it's actually, when you write it in, it's really like x plus 11. Just so you know, that's the opposite. So we're looking for that piece. So if I knew that, I know right away I can get rid of this one, because remember, it's its opposite. When you find the x, you actually put the opposite into vertex form. And I can get rid of this one. And then the last part is, how do I find my y? Well, if I have my x, so this is where you use your regular x to find y. You use your regular x, so the actual x you solved for, and you plug it back in to your original equation. I'm sorry, function. So it would be -11 squared. Remember, whenever you square a negative, so 11 squared, so just be careful. If you put -11 squared in your calculator, it's going to give you a negative back. So make sure you know that it's actually a positive 121 plus, and then 22 times -11. That would give you a -242. I put plus, but you could have put a -2. I just put it in parentheses. Plus 115. So if you add all those up, so 121 minus or plus a -242, and then plus 115, that's going to get you a -6. This is your y. That's how you find the y. So we have to pick the one with the negative. Okay, so this was the more involved one. We did ones like this. That's the vertex form, putting it in. All right, 14, converting the function to vertex form to find the y coordinate of the vertex. So that's there. So we have to find the x first. So if we have this, so we know the y, we have to find our x first. So negative b times 2 times a. Okay? Our b is -6. So we just do -6 all over 2 times a. Well, a is just like the number 1. So then it just becomes -6. So 6 over 2. So x equals 3. It wants to know the y coordinates, so we have to plug that back into here. So if I plugged this in everywhere I saw an x, I would have 3 squared minus 6 times 3, because I'm plugging my x in, plus 15. So 3 squared, we've got 9. And then minus 6 times 3, so that's 18, plus 15. If you put it all in, you actually get 6. That's your final answer. That's the y coordinate. All right, 15, converting the vertex into intercept form. Okay, so this is the intercept form here. So remember, a couple ways we can do it. Looking at this one, you can double distribute, standard form, pull out, do the formula, find the vertex of the x and then the y and plug it in. So that's what we've learned so far. So we're going to go ahead and do that just to see what it's going to look like. So this is going to be x squared and then minus 4x and then minus 2x on the bottom. I should have put that there, and then plus 8. And then I'm going to combine those. So x squared minus 6x plus 8. So remember, to find the x of our vertex, we've been using this formula again. It's just the negative b over 2 times a. So negative, and our b, it's just -6 again over 2 times a, which a is just 1. So that gives us, it's kind of the same as the other one, so that one actually gives us x is 3. If you recall, if x is 3, when we plug it into vertex form, it should be x is -3. So we're looking here for, can't be this one, can't be that one. So it's a -3. Now, we can plug in, we have to go to our original, so we're using this to plug in. We use this one to plug it in. So I'm going to plug it back into, I'm actually going to plug it back into this one I simplified, because I don't want to double distribute again. So 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 8. So 9 minus 6 times 3, and then we have plus 8, so that gives me a -1. That's our y. I have to pick the one with the -1. And our last one, we want to look at the graph of the quadratic function. Which statements would be true? So does the graph have a y-intercept of 0, 5? Well, 0, 5 is right here. It actually is off the graph, so that's a no. The graph has a maximum point, that's the tallest point, remember, of -3, 4. So -3, 4. So this one is actually true. That's the biggest it can get. The graph models this function, so we want to look at the vertex. Remember, it's opposite for the x. So the vertex here would be 3, 4. Let's see. 3 4s over here, so that's a no. And then looking here, intercepts right here. So it's -5, 0. Got that one. And then the other one is -1, 0. So that one's true. Yes. Yes. So true. True. We're going through checking each statement. The graph's axis of symmetry is at x is -3. So we go to the x-axis and look at, is that the axis of symmetry, meaning, so that would also be true. The graph represents this function here, a -x squared minus 6x minus 5. So I would look at a couple things we want to pick out to see. You can solve for the intercepts, or let's make sure, is this -5? So 0, -5. And then I would check to see it's an x squared. You will want to pull out and see the two intercepts. So from there, this takes a little bit of checking, but we can go ahead and see that that would be true. And then the last one, and just to let you know, on the test, there's not going to be as many you have to go through that are true. It might only be 1 or 2, hint, hint. And then this one, the function here, -x squared minus 6x plus 1, has a greater y-intercept than the graph show. So the y-intercept here is y equals 0, -5. This would be a y-intercept of 0, 1. So actually, this one is true. It is greater. This one is greater than an intercept of -5. So this would also be true. Okay, so you'll just go through the statements and ask yourself some questions. And that is it. That is for the practice test. If you are able to do this, you should be able to get all of them, almost all of them right on the actual test. Okay, well, good luck.